Welcome back to my channel, guys, and today I want to talk about 6 mindsets that make you look like a low-value man when it comes to dating. So I decided to switch it up for you guys, and I actually went on Dave Perota's podcast. For all of you that don't know, Dave Perota is a dating expert. He's worked with over thousands of guys and completely transformed their dating life. He has over 100K on Instagram, and so we sat down on this podcast and talked about these really deadly mindsets that guys have that make them look low value.
What is going on, guys, and welcome to the podcast. We have Julia back on today, and we're going to be diving into a lot of mindset stuff. A lot of the biggest, most common mindset mistakes that we see guys make, both in our program and just overall. First off, what's going on, Julia? How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
For sure. It's good to have you back on here. So again, a lot of guys have a lot of trouble with the mindset stuff, and what happens as a result of that is they take less action. Maybe they give up more quickly when it comes to actually trying to attack and get a handle on their dating life. They lose confidence more quickly, and they just kind of lose that feeling of just being in attack mode of like, I'm going to get this handled because of the mindset stuff. So it's really, it's not always the sexiest stuff out there, right? Talking about mindset, but it is really, really important. And that's why it's something that we do cover really heavily in our program too. So let's kind of kick things off. We're going to cover 6 big mindset mistakes guys make. And the first big one that I think we see is and this might be the biggest one, is just the scarcity mentality, right? And I think the scarcity mentality really is that feeling that you can't get more of what you have, or you can't get it at all, right? So if you start dating a girl, you can never meet another girl like her. You go on, we've seen guys like this in our program where they go on like 1 or 2 dates with a girl and they're already head over heels for her, and they think, I'll never find another girl like her. And then they're thinking about her weeks or months later, right? So it really does affect guys. Like what would you say your take is on like the scarcity mentality and what you've seen?
Well, I would always, with having the therapy background, I would always ask why. Like, why is that? Why do you think that you can't get somebody else, right? And when you break that down and you ask that question, a lot of guys realize it's past trauma or something that happened to them in the past. And a lot of times it has to do with parenting, and it has to do with, maybe feeling like they were neglected or that they didn't have that support and that was always going to leave. And when you have that mindset and when you're brought up that way, it's really easy to just cling on to something that feels right? Like you're getting your needs met in this thing, or you're so afraid that this person's going to leave you. And I think that at the end of the day, they rather be in something that's not great than be alone. Because if they're alone, they have to face these fears. They have to look in the mirror and realize that they're alone and that maybe that they were rejected. And no one wants to feel that way. And so it's so much easier to just cling on to that idea of like, this is the only thing I'll ever have. And it really affects dating because, you don't look at red flags. You don't see all the issues with this one girl that maybe you're going on dates with because you're so worried about losing her. And not only are you missing maybe red flags, you're also putting out this really needy energy, and that pushes the girl away. She's like, I don't want to be with this guy. This guy is like really, keeps texting me. He's always calling me. He's always trying to hang out. When in reality, if you just took a step back and realized your shit and realized that if you, hey, I need to give this girl some space, she might actually want to be with you. But a lot of times guys just push them away without even knowing it by having this behavior.
And just from like the girl's perspective, how obvious is it for you when you're dealing with a guy who's kind of like in that scarcity mode?
Oh, it's like right away. I'm coaching and I can tell that this guy has this mindset, right? And so it's really hard because I know how great these guys are, right? But then I'm like, look, she's literally not going to be interested. She's going to ghost you. She's not going to text you back. And then what happens? She ghosts, she doesn't text him back. And the problem is because girls feel like claustrophobic. They feel you're like creeping in. They feel like you're getting really, really attached. And girls do this too. Don't get me wrong. This is not just guys. But in most of the time, guys are the ones that are doing it because they're the ones doing the pursuing. And, it's such a turnoff. And I think that's why girls gravitate a little bit more to that bad boy energy of like the kind of I don't give a fuck, because they have to work for it. They have to, get that attention from that guy. And instead of just always getting the attention, and they're just like, I don't want this anymore.
Yeah, no, all that definitely makes sense. And as far as like getting out of this scarcity mentality, it's hard for a lot of guys to imagine because they're like, well, if I don't have any girls, how do I feel like I'm abundant? Right. And I think
Mm,
part of it is making sure that you have a good process down for how to handle the early phases and even the later phases of the dating process, right? To where if you
100%.
know, yeah, if you know you're only going to hang out with a girl once a week or once every week and a half, you're only really going to be texting her to set up dates with maybe a little bit of banter in between, and you're going to keep the dates relatively basic early on, like not too much depth to them as you get to know her more before you really decide if it's like you really want to dive a little further with her. Then if you can just follow that process, then you're going to be in pretty good shape. Just don't break the rules, right? Even if
Yeah. Well,
mentally you
the thing
want
is,
to.
guys need a game plan, right? And a lot of times they don't have one, so then they feel like really chaotic because they're like, but I don't know what to do. And so I think that comes back to, like you said, exactly, they need a game plan, but on top of that they need this structure of knowing like I can set up more than one date. And I think when you have that revolution and you're like, wait a second, if I just follow this blueprint and it works for setting up multiple dates a week, then you're not in this like a mindset of being like, wait a second, like I have to jump and attach to every girl that I see because I was so worried about losing her. When you now kind of start having that abundance mindset because you're seeing it for yourself that it actually works. But I think a lot of times guys don't even get there. They don't even think it's possible to have an abundance mindset because they've never had it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at the average guy, he's going on like 3 or 4 dates a year, if that, right? And there's some guys that are going on 0 dates, and it's like, yeah, a lot of these guys don't have any sort of process or game plan, or even just the fact that a guy could go on a few dates a week just seems like out of the realm of possibility for them, right? So
Yep.
getting past that, having that process, having that game plan, and then the results will start coming through, and then it'll get easier and easier, right? The hardest is
For
at the
sure.
beginning. That's when you want to follow the process, is just remind yourself of these things and keep moving forward. So I think all that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and I think too, and on top of that, you really want to make sure while you're, following this blueprint, whether it's like through our program or another program or whatever it is, having a solid plan, but also making sure you're working through these roadblocks in your mindset with somebody, right? Like knowing whether it's a therapist or the coaches on the, me and the program or whoever it is like helping you get through like why you feel like you need to attach to whoever it is. Because when you can work through those things too, on top of having a game plan, you're going to start feeling a lot more relaxed and a lot more independent and feeling like you don't need somebody else to fulfill your happiness.
Yeah, and it really is. We've seen it with a lot of guys who come through the programs. Like it really is a game changer once they start working through this, and they just get so much better results the further they get into it with a girl, rather
Yeah.
than like we've seen some guys completely self destruct, like two,
Oh,
three
yeah.
weeks in dating a girl, right? And then being able to clean that up makes things a lot better going forward, and actually opens the door for good relationships. But awesome there, and yeah. So just kind of moving on to the second mistake, I would say the fear of failure is also super big. And
Hmm.
this is something for a lot of guys, it might paralyze them from taking action. What if I get rejected? What if the people judge me? What if it just doesn't work out? What if, I get coaching and it doesn't work out? What if they're so hyper focused on like the if it doesn't work out that they can't just be in attack mode and actually get out there and meet women in the first place.
Hmm.
And this leads to all kinds of harmful habits. What kinds of things have you seen from guys when it comes to just sort of the fear of failure?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it comes from your ego, right? And I'm not talking about like your ego in the sense of like having this big ego. It's more like as a man, like you have an ego, and every time you get rejected and you internalize that, it's another peg down of feeling not good enough, right? It's another not confidence killer. And then if you feel like you've had a lot of those, maybe you've had past trauma in the sense you were bullied in high school, or maybe you weren't a popular kid and people were mean to you, or maybe you didn't have a lot of friends growing up. Like those are all things that were kind of daggers in you. And I think that people are so afraid of stepping outside their bubble and getting hurt. And like if I go and approach that girl and she rejects me, she's rejecting me as a person, and I'm just like not good enough. And I think a lot of guys are really fearful of that. They're fearful of putting themselves out there and then their ego getting hurt and then they're not going to be able to recover. And I think a lot of guys come into our program that deal with this and they're like, yeah, I was bullied really bad in high school or in college. I had this happen to me, or a girl I was with cheated on me and it was like the end of the world. And it's me. I'm the problem. You know, I'm not good enough. And when you have that mindset and you like, I like to talk about it as like a rain jacket, right? So when you go outside and you're not wearing a rain jacket, you're just going to keep getting wet. And that's what's happening with these guys. They have interactions and they keep getting rejected and they're filling their body up with this like hatred towards themselves. But instead, they need to learn to put on a rain jacket and then they go outside and the rain just comes right off of them. And then they're not internalizing that rejection as there's something wrong with them.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy, the rain jacket analogy. And when it comes to the fear of failure, I think for a lot of guys, like again, they don't have the reference experience to see that success is even possible. So it's hard for them to even get past that. And then they continuously, it's like the rain jacket, they continuously look back and just see that as like the rationalization for why they're not successful. But I always tell guys, it's like you gotta, again, it's like shifting into attack mode where it's like, okay, if you fail, does it really matter? Like there's no, it's not like there's some final failure where if you get rejected really badly from
You're
a
dead.
girl, that's just it. Yeah, you can't approach girls anymore. Like you're a mockery to the world, right?
Yes.
That's
Yep.
not going to happen. So if you can kind of see it more of like a game of like, okay, I go and approach. If it doesn't work out, I still win. I still learn. I can still get better. That's what separates the guys who really, really do well. And that if you look at like me and Beast in our journey, we were just kind of like, all right, let's go. Like, let's get
Yeah.
after it. Like,
Yeah.
let's get rejected as much as possible. Cause why not?
And I think, like you said, like if you don't do anything, you're still at zero. And if you get rejected, you're kind of still at zero. So it's like, it doesn't really fucking matter at the end of the day, right? Like, I think that the only win out of the situation is A, you need to be proud of yourself for going up and doing it. Cause a lot of guys don't have the balls to even go and do an approach. So that's a win in itself. And second of all, the only thing that, you know, positive, you get a girl's number, right? Or you have a really good interaction where the girl's like, oh my God, I'm super flattered. Thank you so much. I actually am married or have a boyfriend, but you still get a really good interaction out of it. And I think that that is what people need to strive for instead of thinking like, well, what happens if I get rejected? So what? Who cares if you get rejected? Doesn't matter. Rain jacket.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the real final failure is not even trying at all. Right. And not failing at all. That's how you really actually fail and never improve. So that's the thing that you want to avoid. Right. Awesome. So moving on to number 3, another very common thing, just the victim mentality, right? Where guys blame all these external factors for why they're not successful. Everything from their ethnicity to their weight, to their job, to their bank account. There's always a reason why they're not meeting the women that they want to meet or why women don't like them, right? And it's basically at its core, you're avoiding responsibility for what's happening in your life. What kind of things have you seen when it comes to the victim mentality with guys?
Well, I think, you know, like you said, it's just not taking ownership of their own shit. Because at the end of the day, if you do and you look in the mirror and you're not happy, and they're not, right? They're not happy with themselves. They just don't want to have to say it out loud. They don't want to have to face it because if they have to face it, then they have to change it, right? And a lot of times guys aren't there yet. They're not ready to change and put in the effort. So it's a lot easier to just be like, girls don't like me, or it's my ethnicity, or, you know, it's the where I live, or whatever it is. It's just easier to blame the external factors. So I encourage you to catch yourself when you're doing this and think, okay, like why? Like why are you like really? Like what is it? Well, maybe I am a little bit overweight, or maybe, you know, I don't have the balls to make the approach, or maybe I don't have good photos on my dating app, so I'm not getting any matches. Like when you start taking ownership, at least just acknowledging it, like that's the first step. I think a lot of times guys just won't even acknowledge it when they're in this phase. And like, I think a lot of guys come into the program and we kind of call them out and they're just like, fuck, all right, like I need to change this.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of guys, again, they struggle to take that responsibility. And what's always funny, you know, we used to make a lot of approach videos back in the day. There'd always be a guy like, oh yeah, you can't do that in Germany, or you can't do that. Like that doesn't work here or here. And it's like, What was funny was sometimes I would have a video of me doing it there. They actually,
Yeah.
girl, here's a link of me actually doing it there. So
I
what now?
literally, I mean, I've hung out with you and we were walking in Spain. You remember that? And you were like, me and David and you were walking. You're like, hey, hold on one second. You just like went up and approached a girl. I think she was from Germany, but she was in
Yeah.
Spain. But it's like you did whatever. You know what I mean? It doesn't freaking matter. They're girls and men. Like it's like end of the day. Like it doesn't matter where you live.
Yeah, and I think another thing guys got to remember too is pretty much always there's a guy in a worse situation than you who's had all the same, dynamics that you've had to deal with, who's excelling way beyond your wildest dreams. If you're 5'4", we've had a guy in the program who was 5'4", who was like very steadily getting 3 to 4 dates a week in New York, right? Or like
Hmm.
in Jersey. You name it, we've seen it.
Yep.
But you don't want to use that as an excuse, because even if the excuse is legitimate, like it's not, does it really help you at all? Like, does any excuse warrant you not living the life you're capable of living?
Yeah.
And if your answer is no to that, then it doesn't matter. Just do it anyway.
Yeah. Exactly.
Awesome, awesome, cool. So let's move on to number 4. That's the fixed mindset, right? I think that's kind of like an undertone to a lot of what we've been talking about. But the fixed mindset is really where guys they're kind of static. Like they don't feel like they can improve, or like they're not willing to kind of budge off of their views or their perspectives, right? What would you have to say on just like what's your perspective on that?
When guys come into the program, there are some guys that are just like soaking up everything we say and they're just like, so good at just taking all the action. And then we have other guys that are more feel like they know best. And sometimes when we have those kinds of people, you have to really kind of say, well, how's it been working out for you? Like you joined this program because what you've been doing has not worked. And I think that's the mistake a lot of guys make, is like they think they know best, even if their situation is not great. And sometimes they have to be humbled and take a step back and realize, shit, like what I'm doing is not working. And I maybe need to listen to people that are good at this or have had success with this. And I think when a lot of times guys join the program and they talk to the people that have been in the program for a while, and that's like what everyone says. It's just like, listen to what they say, do what they say. We have one guy in the program that said, and he's been with us, I think, for over a year. And he was talking about how his dating game literally completely turned around when he stopped trying to do his own text messages and he started to implement the text messages that we gave him in the program. He was like, I started getting 4 to 5 dates just by only like texting the way they told me to text. And he's like, but then when I try to do it my way, he's like, I don't get responses. And he said like a light bulb clicked and he was like, what I'm doing is not working. And I don't know why I'm trying to force something. Like, I just wish it was working. He's like, I just wanted my way to work. And he was like, and it doesn't. He's like, I'm an over texter. I text too much. I'm needy. But when I follow their thing, he's like, I'm getting all these dates. And he's like, I realized that I had to take a step back. And I think that's the end of the day, is you need to take a step back and listen to the people that know, because we can help and we can get you the success in the dating life that you want.
Yeah, and I think whether you're working with us or a coach or doing it on your own, like just do what's helpful. Like if something
Exactly.
serves you, great. If it's not, don't just hang on to it just to hang on to it. Like just because you're being difficult with yourself. Like it doesn't
Or
make
because it
sense.
worked one time, right? I love that. Yeah, but it worked this one time. And I'm like, okay, but like that's just, there's so many other things, the reason why that could have worked, right? So don't hang on to it.
Yeah, you want to find like consistent, repeatable things that you can do, because that's what this is all about. Like if you can have a consistent, repeatable process, then you don't have to spend that much mental energy thinking through every text that you send or every date that you go on or every situation that you're in. You kind of have some principles that you can fall back on. Okay, she sent this, like here's what I'm going to say. And it just becomes way easier, right? Rather than, I think we talked about before, guys just kind of all over the place. No sort of framework or anything. They're just kind of, just throwing things against the wall.
And then it makes dating really stressful. And then guys are like, well, I just don't want to date because it's just so much work. But if you have a blueprint and you stick to it and you have a game plan, okay, when I send this, I send this, and I send this. Like you said, it's a little bit robotic, but it makes the dating process super easy and simple. Well, and then that way you can focus on leveling up your job or focusing on like the new hobby. And dating doesn't have to be the prime focus where you're like, I don't know what to send this text, so I'm just not going to send it.
Yeah, when you have the repeatable like process, it can now, like dating can now run almost as like a system or process for you in the background while you're doing your other stuff. So it's another funny thing where guys are like, oh, like, dating, I don't want to make it a priority. It's not my number one priority. It's like, all right, bro, like it doesn't have to be your number one priority. It's not mine, right? Like it hasn't
Yeah.
been in the past, but it's like, it's something where you should be able to get a few dates a week or several dates a month almost on autopilot if you're doing this right without even thinking about it. And that's kind of the point. So that way you can put yourself on the path to meeting a great girl, and you're not just one of these focus on yourself king guys who just doesn't date for 7 years and then he's socially stunted for the rest of his life, right?
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, see that a lot too. But okay, cool. So let's move on to number 5, which would be external validation dependency. And this is something I dealt with a lot, and it was funny for because it wasn't necessarily that I was looking for it from women. It was I was trying to get women to get validation from other guys, right? Because I think growing up, I always saw like I was always the guy who couldn't get girls, like shy, not super confident. And then I was like, I'm proving everybody wrong, right? And it kind of started when I was in a fraternity in college, and I was like, you know what, this is my proving ground. I'm about to go hard, right? And I went really hard, and and it was all about the validation in college for me, and that kind of kept up for a few years after college until I really realized, like, what am I doing here? Like I should be doing this for me and not for the external validation of anyone. Yeah, you're just kind of curious your thoughts on that and like what you've seen with guys when it comes to this mistake.
Yeah, I mean it's really remarkable that you were able to like see that though. I think a lot of times a lot of guys just really don't see that, and that's a really hard thing to reflect on and kind of call yourself out on. I think, unfortunately human natures are just validation seekers. It makes us feel good when we get compliments. It makes us feel good when we feel important. But it goes back to figuring out how to self-validate, and a lot of people don't know how to do that. And then so they find validations in all the wrong ways. And the problem I think I see a lot with guys doing this, and again girls do this too, is that they get so much validation from just like the texting or having multiple girls to talk to, even if it's not going anywhere, even if they become pen pals with the girl, they still like hold on to this idea that it could turn into something else because they are getting validation from it. And I think at the end of the day, that almost hurts them more because they get that dopamine spike of the girl texting them. They get that spike of like, oh my God, I have someone interested in me. And then when she does ghost, or when she, or doesn't answer, or she loses interest, the guy's fucked. And he's just like completely in the gutter. And then it's that cycle up and down, up and down. Every time the new girl, he spikes. And so he's constantly looking for it, like a toxic relationship almost, but it's not even in a relationship, right? But they're looking for that, seeking that validation constantly. And the problem is they don't know how to self-regulate, self-validate, and they just hate dating. And then it becomes this like really vicious cycle, and then they're just miserable. And I think that if guys learn to validate, and they learn to be proud of things that they accomplish and work towards, that women can just be a bonus, and it doesn't necessarily have to consume them.
Yeah, so you mentioned being able to like, be proud of things they accomplish, things like that. Like, is there like one tip you would give guys to that can help them to work on that internal like self validation?
Yeah, so there's a great book called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. I tell all the guys to read it when they join the program, because a lot of times a lot of guys come in with no self-love. And when you don't have self-love, it affects your confidence, it affects your validation, it affects just like who you are as a person. But you need to be proud of things that you accomplish and that you do. And I think when you can learn to, maybe you got a promotion at work and you worked your ass off for it, like you need to be proud of yourself and you need to validate yourself. Like, wow, I worked really hard and I got this. Maybe you have a hobby that you love and you gotten really good at, let's say you do jujitsu or Muay Thai and you really like that, like those are the things you need to be proud of and validate yourself from, not girls that just texting you. Because what happens when you stop looking for the validation elsewhere, then you don't need it. And then when you have this energy of like, I don't need you, I don't need girls, there's something about that that's really attractive to girls. And I think it will make your dating life even better because there's like something mysterious about you. Like, why are you not needing my attention?
It's kind of funny because you also get that too when you're getting so many girls and so many dates. There's like I joke with my friends, it's like there's like a level of sauciness like about you that kind of happens where it's just like you're walking around with this swag where it's just like, I don't need anything right now. I'm good. Like
Yeah.
I've got it rolling, right? And that's like
And
another
people
abundance
want
factor.
that. Yeah, and people like see that and they're like, I want that energy. I want whatever he's carrying. He's like, and you carry yourself with such a, like your shoulders up, your head up. Like it's kind of this attitude of like, yeah, I don't need anything. I don't need anything from you. And everyone's like obsessed with that. You know, you see those guys that walk into the bar, you know, you can pick up right away those people that have that energy and then versus someone that doesn't have that energy.
100%. You gotta have the sauce. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so moving on to the last mindset. I think this is one that undertones a lot of the other ones too, and prevents a lot of guys from making progress, and that would be perfectionism, right? And perfectionism is really the guy who's seeking flawlessness in everything. He needs to do it all just the right way, right? And he can't do it otherwise, right? And he kind of uses that as an excuse. So is this one you've seen a lot, and how, and if so, like how have you seen it manifest for guys?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is a control thing and feeling like everything needs to be in their control in order for them to move forward. And unfortunately, in dating, there is things that are in your control, and then there's a lot of things that are just not in your control. And guys still want to control it. And when you have this mindset, perfection, control, whatever, you know, it can really fuck up your dating life because you're expecting a certain outcome and that's not in your control. You can do everything in your control to set it up, but then the girl can flake for a million different reasons. And then they're racking their brain about like, why did she flake? Was it the text message I sent because I sent it perfectly? Was it the timing? And they just go through these like vicious cycles. And I've had guys in the program just being like, can you just walk it out with me to figure out like, and I'm like, whoa, like you can't control this. Like dating is a numbers game. You know, I always talk about, you know, you have to think about it as you get 20 matches on a dating app. Let's say you get 20 matches on Hinge, right? And then out of those 20 matches, 8 girls respond, right? So now we're like, we don't know why those other girls didn't respond, but they didn't respond. And out of those 8 girls, you get 3 numbers. Again, we don't know why those other girls didn't give you your numbers, but out of our control. And then those three numbers, you know, 2 girls respond. So again, now 2 girls, and then only one of them decides to go on a date with you. So you started with 20 and you got 1 date out of that. Like that just happens. That's just dating. But the guys want to control every aspect of that. They want to know why. And a lot of times we don't know why. And so when you have that mindset of perfection or control, it really, really ruins your dating life because you can't control it.
Well, yeah, there's definitely a numbers game aspect to dating, but it's also like having the iterative approach of like you're reflecting intelligently. What could you do better? What and having that mindset. But then also, I always kind of take an MVP approach, right? Just like the minimal viable product, right? They talk about in the startup world of just like, okay, I'm gonna try some things, might screw up. I'm going to learn from it, and then we'll iterate and get better. We'll keep improving, right? And
For
I
sure.
think for a lot of guys too, you gotta be able to let go of it working out exactly the way you think it needs to work out. You know, I've talked to guys. I talked to a guy yesterday. He's like, Dave, you know, I just don't know. Like, this is a guy who was he had applied for a program in the past. He's like, man, I just don't know if I want to take girls home. Like, I don't know if I want that to be part of the process. I'm like, you don't want to take girls home, bro? Like, what does that even mean? Like, it's so you
Yeah,
never
yeah.
want to get intimate with a girl. Like, you never want to take the next steps, and it's you have to let go of how you think it should work out and do what actually works, because otherwise you're just wasting your time and you're just going to be spinning your wheels.
For sure.
Cool. But yeah, so just to kind of recap these mindsets. So, are the mindset mistakes? We have the scarcity mentality, the fear of failure, the victim mentality, the fixed mindsets, the external validation dependency, and perfectionism. So, I'd really sit and reflect and be honest with yourself. Like, which of these mindset mistakes might you be making right now? And what can you do to start improving them, right? Because being able to fix these is really going to make a big impact on you being able to go out there and have success with women. Julia, is there anything else to kind of wrap this up, and any final words you say when it comes to mindset mistakes for guys?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, you just really, like Dave said, you want to reflect on these things, and it's okay if you're doing them. You know, that's everyone's human. That's happens. But like Dave said, he was able to reflect and realize, like, what am I doing? Why am I seeking this validation, right? And when you can do that, you're already in the step in the right direction with your dating life. And I think, whether it's our program, another program, having a mentor that can help you walk through these steps, because we do have a lot of guys that come on to our Beast Dating coaching program, and I do the mindset calls, and they come on, they're like, I have nothing, nothing, I'm fine. And then we kind of like walk through it, and then they're like, oh, I have this roadblock and this roadblock and this trauma, this girl cheated on me. And I'm like, okay, there's so much to unpack here. And that's like, a lot of times guys are holding on to things without even knowing. It's all subconscious that they're holding on to these past things that have happened, and it's affecting their future dating life. So if you're like in that situation and you're a guy that is struggling with your dating life and you don't really know what else to do, you've tried different things and nothing's working, like, you have to start looking at the mindset, because a lot of times that's a thing that guys overlook.
Well, yeah, and just to kind of wrap this up, it's the ego that guys have, right? They hold on to their ego. They put these walls up. They think, no, they're good, right? We call it the Chad, right? That's like a funny acronym, or not acronym, just like a funny phrase, right? Because you think of the Chad guy, it's like he has it all set up, he's all good. So like the Chad stereotype is a guy, he thinks he's all good, he doesn't need any help. But my standpoint is, it never hurts to just be open to feedback and open to things that you could be doing better, even once you get to really high levels of the game.
For
Like
sure.
there's plenty of times and things that I still learn even today from people. And I'm never at the point where I'm just like, oh, I'm 100% good. I have it fully down. You always got to keep learning. Don't be the Chad. Do not be the Chad. But yeah, cool. So I think we can wrap that up on that note. Julie, it's been great having you on. And again, for you guys who don't know, she does the mindset coaching in her program. She's got a master's in therapy. She's awesome. And if you want more direct feedback from her, you can go apply to our Beast coaching program. Just go to beast-coaching.com. You can learn a little bit more. And Julie, it's been great having you on again.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Dave.